Let's talk Mountain West, Rocco. I know you're in Vegas right now covering the WCC. I know you'll be there this week as well. What impact, because you do this exercise daily from a bracketing perspective, what impact has San Diego State's losses had? They've had 2 losses in the last week. UNLV on the road, back home, overtime loss to Boise State, their only home loss all year. How has that impacted the Aztecs from a seeding perspective?
Yeah, I think it's made an impact because before last week began, we were still looking at an Aztec team fighting to hang on to the 4 seed position that the selection committee had told us on the bracket preview show, which I believe was about 3 Saturdays ago, correct? So
Yep.
In that example, everything kind of shifted quite a bit. You know, you lose a home game. You also look at the body of work. Basically, everybody in the top 7 they faced, so those 6 teams, they lost to every single one of them on the road. Really nothing wrong with losing those types of road games, but when you go 0 for 6, it kind of stands out a little bit. And I would say on the good news is we know the committee was high on them before, so how far can they actually fall? But some of the metrics, you know, whether it's resume or performance, both sides took a hit. They're starting to lose some of those comparisons. So San Diego State today, they're a 3-9 team against quadrant 1. The nice thing is they're perfect against everybody else. So that 3-9 looks really ugly, but once you start digging deeper into the resume, everything's solid. So I do think that gives the Aztecs a higher floor than most in these volatile situations with kind of lopsided poor records. But at the same time, there's teams like, you know, hate to say it, but like BYU, South Carolina, even maybe like a Dayton team who's a little bit safer to put ahead right now just because they haven't done that much wrong. And so San Diego State, to me, fell to a 6 seed this week.
And the opposite here, Rocco, the impact, if they do happen to go and run the table here in the Mountain West Conference Tournament and they win the conference tournament, what impact would that be on the Aztecs heading into March?
Well, you just got to look at the draw first. That's the most important thing. So they'll open with UNLV, obviously no slouch, and they're playing really great basketball. It's not going to look like a tournament level win because, you know, unless UNLV wins this tournament themselves, they'll be probably NIT bound. However, a tough game, probably land somewhere in the second quadrant, get that one knocked out. I think a reasonably beatable Utah State team, even though they got first, they kind of had the scheduling advantage this year, not taking anything away, but the Aggies, not a horrible draw from my standpoint. I don't think they're that intimidating to the Aztecs. So if they get those 2 wins, I think that's the key, because when you get to the championship game, unfortunately, what we've learned here the last couple of years, and I really hope this shifts back to what we're used to from the older days. The committee kind of wraps up most of their selecting and even a lot of their seeding process. So I don't know if it's going to move the needle to actually win the championship game. Now, obviously, you want that banner at Viejas Arena and all the stuff that comes with winning the Mountain West Tournament. But I think by then, especially if they go up against a team that's already in, like a Nevada or a Boise or even a Colorado State, who are all on the opposite side of the bracket, I just don't know if it's going to move the needle that much to just add another win against one of those 3.
Do you think a 5 seed, though, would be realistic? Like if they got 2 additional quad 1 wins, beat Utah State, Boise State, I'm making it up, or even an additional quad 1 win with a quad 2 win and a quad 1 loss, like is a 5 seed in play for San Diego State?
Yeah, definitely. I think it gets really messy. So right now, like BYU is the best 5 seed at, 17th overall. Right. After that, there's 3 more spots on the 5 line that I think are kind of up for grabs. I mean, I'm a little higher on South Carolina because I love what they've done on the road. But if you look at some of their performance metrics, it's down there in the low 40s. That's where it gets really mushy, and it's kind of hard to project those lower 5s all the way down to even like the higher 8s. So there's a lot of room for some of these teams to fall or jump. But San Diego State, like we talked about, because they won at Gonzaga, that win is aging like fine wine.
Yep.
The St. Mary's win is turning out to be good as just another piece of evidence they can win away from home. And then, of course, if you get a win over like a Utah State in the semis, that's a third piece of evidence that I think will factor in. It's basically just going to be a comparison of, who do you like the most at the end? And there is, like I said, those spots are pretty wide open. I think the winner, if Gonzaga wins tonight, they could actually get up to a 5 themselves. So both of those teams, plus like a Nevada, a Dayton, a Clemson, even a St. Mary's, are capable of getting up to the 5. So they're right in that mix.
Rocco Miller, bracketologist, back with us here. John and Jim, San Diego Sports 760. I'm curious because it's so data driven, and I've always been a numbers guy. I'm fascinated by it. You do an amazing job breaking it down. Is there subjectivity, though, in the process? I mean, obviously, humans fill out the bracket. It's 12 people in the committee, so the answer's got to be yes. But, like, look at it this way.
Mhm.
Like, I'm with you. You look on paper, you see San Diego State, they're 3-9 in quad one. In a day, hear me out, they could be 5-8. If they beat UNLV drops out of quad one. They lose a quad one loss. You could argue if that's good or bad. But then you've got a team that's 31st in Nevada. They could move to 30th. You have a team that's 32nd or
Yep.
33rd in Utah State. They could move to
Yep.
30th. So, like, it's volatile, especially the Mountain West, where teams hover on that 30 line, on that 75 line. How much subjectivity is there in this process?
Well, I think it's important to take a look at the names on the front of the jersey. I'm a huge opponent to the blind resume stuff you see online. I think that's a bad exercise because it is important the teams that you actually play. You need to know which teams are actually NCAA bound or not.
Right.
And I track how many wins you have against the projected field. You hear committee members when interviewed, whether it's by me or on television or wherever you might find them interviewed. They always talk about how many wins did you have against the field? What was your record against the projected field? And right now, San Diego State's actually in pretty good shape compared to, this 5 through 7 range set of teams. San Diego State with 6 wins against the projected field. The 2 big ones I mentioned away from Viejas already. And that's, the only other team that's right there with them is Nevada, who also has 6. And you could argue theirs are a little stronger because they got 3 in league on the road plus TCU out in Hawaii. But again, a lot of weight with that Gonzaga win now. So it always matters the teams you play, where you played them, and how you did. And then there should be enough data for the decision to be easy without even really needing the metrics in most cases. I think the metrics are there just to kind of double check your work. And again, with the metrics listed, we don't know that for sure. It's only the 5th year of that being in existence. So you might have a couple committee members that take shortcuts and they just want to look at the metrics and vote. I would hope that it's an honor for them to be on the committee and they take a look at all the data available to them. Because I know I track about 20 different categories in my database. And you can start to get to a pretty clear decision once you do a deeper evaluation on each team.
Rocco Miller, Bracketeer.org, Field of 68, great bracketologist with us on John and Jim. Again, we're 5 days out from Selection Sunday. Now, a year ago, Rocco, as you know, San Diego State, as a 5 seed, shipped out east to Orlando. They played Charleston. I don't know the distance from Charleston to Orlando, but obviously San Diego had to make the 3 time zone move or whatever, 5-hour flight, whatever it was. This year, and again, it's just an exercise at this point. This could change in the flip of a coin, and it's just your bracket as opposed to the actual selection committees. But you have them right now in a 6-11 game in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania against JMU, which is like a 3 or 4 hour drive from Pittsburgh. Now, I get it. The top seeded teams, top 4 seeds are quote unquote protected, and Harrisonburg, Virginia isn't exactly right next door to Pittsburgh. Is that all a factor, though, when you have a higher seeded team, even if they're not protected, taking on a lower seeded team when the higher seeded team is going across the country to take on a team that's in driving distance?
Yeah, well, the way it works is you go 1 seed line at a time, and you said it perfectly there with the top 4 seeds being protected. But in most cases, even in that case, if it was a 4 versus 13 and we had the same schools, the rule now is 75 miles. I think they kind of give a few extra miles. If there's somebody 80 or 90 miles, they might not let them play a 4 seed and above. But when you're in that 5, 6, 7 and below range, it's anything goes. And you seed the teams 1 line at a time. So with the 6 seeds, Gonzaga was just right ahead of San Diego State this week. And so they took that they took the Omaha spot. And that meant the team below in that order went to Pittsburgh. You could have flip-flopped those. Both those teams are really close on the evaluations. We'll see how Gonzaga does tonight. But you're really just going in order. I also have Nevada as a 6 seed, who I also had higher than both of those, and they ended up in the Salt Lake City spot. So it goes in order, and St. Mary's was the other one. So that's just kind of crazy how it worked out this week. We had 4 West Coast teams. Of course, somebody had to go to Pittsburgh. And the way it sorted out with the order, and then also looking to prevent things like non-conference rematches. And what the committee's been telling us here these last couple of years is they also want to prevent second round rematches, if at all possible. So it's creating quite a bit of, Jenga across the board on each seed line. So, I'll get all the way down to the 12s, and Grand Canyon keeps showing up. Of course, we can't have Grand Canyon anywhere near San Diego State. Right. They also played South Carolina. They can't be near South Carolina. So there's just a lot of these intricacies that, if a fan sees the bracket, they might overreact right away. But there's a real reason why each team is where they are. And naturally, just because college basketball is so much drama anyway, you're going to get those great, sexy matchups just by, default within the process.
All right, so let me ask you this, because you cover this, you understand that people talk about this, certainly those that are interested in the Mountain West. Like this idea of six bids has been talked about for months, but this like 1 in 1,000 idea, is this even possible? As someone that does this exercise every single day, or will they penalize the Mountain West because it's not the Big Ten? Is it possible UNLV wins the league, New Mexico loses in a championship game in this hypothetical, even Colorado State wins a game or two, I don't even know what's possible here, and all 7 teams are in, or is there no path whatsoever to 7 Mountain West teams in the NCAA tournament?
Yeah, it's interesting because, on the surface, you look at an 11-team league. That's the 7th strongest league, right? I would say that's probably fair. Maybe the 6th strongest, you could argue. But over half their members making the field. I mean, that seems a little extreme on the surface. The good news for the Mountain West is that is not how the process works. Every team is their own individual entity. They're evaluated separately, and everybody's got their own body of work. The reason why I have New Mexico the 2nd team out today, and again, that's debatable. I think there's reasons to select them still. I'm not saying they would for sure be out. They're one of those teams where, I think they're in better shape than like a Villanova or an Iowa, who just have extreme records where they're under 500 through a huge amount of games. You'd much rather take a New Mexico than those two, for example. But in their particular case, because they played so many home games due to their athletic director wanting to get the gate, it's a huge deal down there to get that 14,000 strong, 9 non-conference games a year. It hurt their resume. They're a 268th ranked non-conference strength of schedule, and they also had 7 opportunities to go on the road against quad 1 and 2, and only 1 win at Nevada. It was a great win, but it only happened once, and they really needed one of those last 2 road wins they had down the stretch. Lost both of them close to both Boise, and we saw a Utah State game, another heartbreaker. And now there's just not enough meat on the bone in that road area. There's enough reasons to leave them out. They're also just 6 and 8 against the top 2 quadrants. So like you said, if they get all the way to Saturday, which they'll have to do to get that even to 500, because the Air Force one's not going to change that in this first game. So, and here's the kicker. They have the Air Force home loss plus UNLV home loss counts as a subpar loss as well. It's just, I just think there's enough reasons to leave them out to get to that nice, comfortable 5 for the league that I think, would sit a little bit better with maybe most committee members. But we will see how it plays out, because I'm not saying 6 is impossible. And of course, if UNLV does win the tournament this weekend, I think you're going to see 6, because I don't think you can leave the other 5 out.
Interesting. So there's a couple of paths then to 6, because if New Mexico wins the league, they're in. And it's going to be hard to leave the other 5 out. If UNLV wins the league, then they are in. And it's hard to leave the other 5 out. So, yeah, and there's still at least, that's pretty realistic. There's absolutely a path here for the Mountain West to 6. So, okay, season ends today. What's amazing here, San Diego, people say, well, San Diego State's 5th place in the league. How do they have, a better seed than Boise State? And Boise State beat them twice. But what you're saying is if the season ended today, San Diego State's not the top seeded team on your bracket. Right? In the field of 68, who has the best resume today, in your opinion, in the Mountain West?
Yeah, it's Nevada today. They're 21st overall on my seed list. San Diego State's 23rd. And we have Gonzaga sandwiched in between them and St. Mary's at 24. Wow. So it's funny. We've got all these West Coast teams bundled in. And then if you go to 25, it's actually the top 7 seed is Utah State. So pretty incredible that we have such a cluster here in the West. But and the reason for that, just to describe why, Nevada has 6 wins against the field themselves. And I mentioned earlier, getting 3 true road games under their belt. They were the only team this year to win at Utah State. Nobody else won there. They won at Colorado State. They won at Boise State. So they got all 3 of those on the road. They also have the TCU win, which they dominated, and TCU is still a tournament team from a large, from the number 1 conference. And then you look across the board, they're 7 and 5 in quad 1, 9 and 5 in top 2, 15 and 6 in all their meaningful games. And then their road marks are excellent as well. 11 and 4 away from Lawler, 5 and 2 in those 7 opportunities they had in top 2 quad road opportunities. And again, I'm giving you all these categories because I've gathered these from committee members as being key indicators, not only for seeding, but also selection. And so for me, Nevada's checking every single box that you want. Of course, San Diego State having the subpar quad 1 record, almost 500 top 2 quad record. It kind of makes it easy to go with Nevada. Also, San Diego State just 2 and 8 in 10 opportunities in true road games against the top two quads. Had a few other opportunities, of course, with the Grand Canyon game and others. So some of that just stands out as you kind of need to go with Nevada if you're doing a full evaluation here.
Man, it's going to be a fascinating next couple of days. What's interesting when you said that is those teams around San Diego State, all four of them, the Aztecs have beaten. Now they've lost to a couple of those teams as well, Utah State.
It's crazy.
And Nevada. It is. Like you said, the margins get thin. You're certainly seeing it in that 5, 6, 7 range right now. Heading towards Selection Sunday. Rocco, we appreciate it. Are you going to be at the Thomas and Mack? Will you be covering the Mountain West at all? I know you're in Vegas right now. Will you be there this weekend?
There's a chance. I'm still floating the schedule. I'll be at the Pac-12 tomorrow, and then we'll play it by ear, but we'll be in touch.
All right. Look forward to it. Rocco Miller, great stuff. Thank you, Rocco. Appreciate it.
Anytime, guys. Thanks for having me on. Talk to you soon.
Bracketeer.org, field of 68.